What if the ocean isn't trying to kill you? What if it's trying to bring you home? But before I get into that, don't forget to like the video and subscribe only if you enjoy these stories. Comment where you're listening from. And if you've ever lived somewhere that just didn't feel right, I want to hear your story for a future video. All right, get comfortable, turn down the lights, maybe turn on a fan, so you can feel the breeze from the sea. The first footprint wasn't what scared me. It was the fact that it was still wet. I live 12 miles inland. That matters here, because nobody comes back from the beach dripping wet without a reason. And certainly not into my locked bedroom in the middle of the night. It was around 5 a.m. when I saw it. A single footprint beside my bed. Human. Bare. Heel facing the wall, toes pointing directly at me. I sat up so fast I got dizzy. The room was cold. Not winter cold, but damn cold. The kind that clings to clothes and hair. The air smelled faintly of brine. Not strong, just enough to make my stomach twist. My first thought was that I'd stepped in something the night before. Maybe tracked it in myself. But the footprint wasn't mine. I checked. Different shape, longer, narrower. The arch too deep, and it was fresh. Water glistened on the hardwood floor. I got out of bed and followed the trail, expecting to find more leading toward the hallway. But there was nothing. Just the one footprint, perfectly formed, perfectly placed, as if whoever made it never took a second step. Or as if they'd stepped in from somewhere else entirely. I cleaned it up, told myself I imagined it. Lack of sleep, weird condensation, maybe a trick of the light. All the usual excuses you reach for when your brain screams that something is wrong. But the next night, I woke to a sound, a soft drip, like water falling from fingers. I sat up, heart racing, and turned on the lamp. There were 2 footprints now, the first in the same place as before, the second, half a step closer to my bed. My blankets tightened around me, as if I had suddenly forgotten how to breathe. I stared at the prints for a long time, hoping, praying, that they would evaporate, smear, change, anything that would make them less real. But the water didn't move. It was as if the prints weren't footprints at all, but stains left by something that didn't worry about temperature or airflow. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The third night, I forced myself to stay awake. Sat in bed with every light on. TV playing. Eyes burning from staring too long. I must have drifted off anyway, because suddenly the room was dark. Completely dark. The lamp had turned itself off. The TV had gone silent, and I heard it again. Drip, drip, drip. My hand shook as I fumbled for my phone. When the screen lit up, I saw them. 3 footprints now, each one closer than the last. The newest print was fresh enough that a drop of water still clung to the edge of the big toe before finally slipping down onto the wood. I ran out of the room. Didn't look back. Slept on the couch with the lights on. But even there, even miles away from the ocean, I swear the air tasted saltier than it ever should that far inland. The 4th night, I stayed at a friend's house. Didn't tell him why. Just said I needed a change of scenery, tried to relax, tried to forget. But at 3:17 a.m., I woke up gasping. Not because I heard something. Not because someone touched me. Because the blankets were damp. When I sat up, my heart stopped. There beside the borrowed bed, on a floor that wasn't mine, in a house that wasn't anywhere near the beach, a 4th footprint, closer than all the others had been, right beside where my hand had been hanging off the mattress. My friend didn't believe me until morning, when he noticed the smell. Not mildew, not humidity. Ocean, heavy, thick, clinging to the walls as if something had breathed the scent into the room. I checked my old bedroom later that day just to be sure. The footprints were gone, all of them. But the air inside was damp, and on the bed frame, at the exact height where a hand would rest if someone leaned over me in my sleep, a smudge of wet sand. Just one, as if they weren't coming to me anymore, but waiting for me to come back. I'd gotten used to seeing the chairs every morning. I never liked them. Nobody did. But there was something almost comforting about their predictability, a strange kind of routine misery. Every dawn, another chair, same perfect angle, all of them staring out at the water like an audience waiting for the ocean to perform. But the morning they turned around, that was the first time I felt genuinely hunted. I was up before sunrise, walking down the wooden path toward the beach. The air was heavy, warm in a way coastal mornings never are. No wind, no sound. Even the gulls were quiet. The sky was the same flat grey as the inside of an old shell. I stepped onto the sand and stopped so fast I kicked up a cloud of it. The chairs, 20 of them now, were all facing away from the ocean. All turned perfectly around, all facing the dunes, all their blank, empty backs staring straight toward the houses. It felt wrong immediately, like watching statues move when you aren't looking. But one thing felt even worse. One chair wasn't turned, the last one in the row, the newest one, still faced the ocean, except it wasn't aligned with the others anymore. It was angled, just slightly, pointing upward, toward a house at the edge of the dunes, my neighbour's house, a little green cottage with wind chimes that never made a sound. I didn't want to look at it. My brain begged me not to, but I followed the chair's angle like following the barrel of a gun. And in the window of that cottage, the upstairs one facing the beach, a curtain moved, not fluttered, not swayed, moved, like a hand had pushed it aside. When I blinked, the curtain fell still again. I tried to call my neighbour, but my phone had no signal, not spotty, not weak, just dead. The way it goes when something stronger than a storm is interfering. I walked closer to the line of chairs, compelled by something I didn't want to understand. The sand around them was untouched. No footprints, no drag marks from the legs. Even though they'd turned around overnight, the sand looked as smooth as glass. No wind had done this. No person had done this. This was placement, the kind of careful, meticulous positioning you'd expect at a funeral. I reached the newest chair, the one pointing at the house, and brushed my fingers along the top bar. The metal was warm, not sun-warmed, like body temperature warm, like someone had been sitting there, or something. A sudden gust of hot air blew past me. It came from the direction of the house, not the ocean, the house. And then the wind chimes on my neighbour's porch finally made a sound. One single chime, a soft, trembling note that didn't match the metal it came from. I looked up. The curtain in the upstairs window moved again. This time, I saw it clearly. A silhouette, tall, still, watching the beach, watching me. I stumbled backward into another chair, knocking it slightly off its perfect alignment. Sand puffed up beneath it, the first disturbance in the entire formation. That's when I heard footsteps in the dunes behind me. Slow, dragging, deliberate. I spun around, but the sand was empty. Except for a deep set of footprints leading toward the chairs. Not human-sized, longer, narrower, toes too pointed. Footprints that ended exactly at the chair I'd just touched. I ran, didn't look back. Didn't breathe until my lungs forced me to. When I finally reached the top of the dune and risked turning around, all 20 chairs were facing the ocean again, all except the one pointing at my neighbour's house. And in the upstairs window, the silhouette was gone. I don't know if my neighbour was home that night. I never saw her again after that morning. But sometimes In the middle of the night, I hear a single chime float across the dunes, soft, lonely, as if something is still standing in that window, waiting for the chairs to finish turning. It had been weeks since the drowned road, and I'd convinced myself I imagined most of it. Stress does things to your brain. Exhaustion does worse. So when I saw the lantern again, my first instinct wasn't fear. It was denial. Flat-out refusal. Because the lantern wasn't underwater this time. It wasn't even near the beach. It was sitting in the middle of my street, glowing. I froze halfway down the driveway, keys in my hand going cold. The lantern burned the same quiet orange as before. Soft, steady, a flame that didn't flicker even though the night breeze pushed against my clothes. My brain tried to make it normal, a prank, a prop, a weird porch decoration that rolled into the street. But the lantern wasn't rolling. It was standing upright, perfectly still, and the metal was dripping seawater, not sprinkled, not damp, dripping. A thin line trailing down the asphalt, making a dark wet stripe that stretched farther down the street. I should have called someone, should have backed away. But I stepped closer, like something had hooked into the center of my chest and started pulling. When I got near enough, the flame brightened, not wildly, deliberately, as if reacting to me, and then it moved. The lantern slid forward across the ground, no footsteps, no hand carrying it, no body attached to it. It glided, slow, utterly silent, leaving that wet line behind it like a trail. I took another step. It moved again. A step, a glide, a step, a glide, leading me, not toward the beach, not toward the drowned road I remembered and pretended I didn't. It led me deeper into town. The further we went, the more I noticed the smell. Salt water, thick and metallic, like a tide pool that's been stagnant too long. My shoes left dry prints next to the lantern's wet trail. Streetlights flickered overhead, as if something was interfering with the power. When we reached Maple Street, I saw the first sign something was wrong. A storm drain overflowing. Not with rainwater, with tidal water, clear, cold, full of swirling sand. It flowed up and over the curb in a slow rise that ignored gravity. The lantern stopped. Its flame darkened, not dimming, but shifting color. Orange to gold, gold to white, white to something almost blue, the color of lightning caught in a jar. I realized where it was pointing, straight ahead, toward the old elementary school. The playground was flooded, not soaked, flooded. Water pooled beneath the swings, under the slides, around the jungle gym. But the water wasn't spreading outward like a normal flood. It was staying in one place, like the ocean had chosen this spot, like it remembered who used to play here. I took a step back. The lantern scraped forward sharply, as if impatient. The flame flared and a wave of heat hit my face. Wrong heat, salt-heavy heat, like standing too close to a ship's engine. I whispered, "What do you want?" I didn't expect an answer. I got one anyway. The water near the swings rippled, not from wind, not from movement, from something rising. Just under the surface, shapes shifted. Long, pale, fluid shapes that looked almost like limbs refusing to form correctly. Something pressed against the underside of the water like a face behind glass. My chest tightened. It was the road people, the ones repairing themselves, the ones who walked beneath the waves. But these were smaller. Not children. Not exactly. More like something trying to remember being a child. The lantern's flame stretched sideways, as if pointing directly at the water. Then I understood. The lantern wasn't guiding me. It was showing me where the ocean would rise next. where it would take, where it would claim. Something splashed, something small, something curious. A pale hand broke the surface, small enough to belong to a child, but the fingers were too long, the joints too flexible, bending in ways they shouldn't. Another hand pressed up beside it, then a face, not complete, not finished, learning. The lantern flickered rapidly, as if excited. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a curb. My breath came in shards. The thing in the water blinked wrong. First one eye, then the other, then the first again, like it was practicing. And then it whispered my name. Not fully, not clearly, but close enough that my vision blurred. The lantern swung sharply as if startled, its flame snapping straight up, and the flooded playground convulsed like something huge shifted beneath it. I ran. I didn't look back, didn't slow, didn't breathe, until I slammed my front door shut behind me. The house shook as if something heavy moved along the outer walls. When I finally dared peek outside, the lantern was gone, the water was gone, everything dry, except for one thing. On my welcome mat lay a single wet footprint, small, perfect, pointing toward my door. I thought I was done with that house. I thought once you escaped something like that, once you slipped through its grip, you were free. You don't expect a building to hold a grudge. You don't expect walls and windows and splintered floors to remember your footsteps. But the house did, and it came looking for me. Not at first. Not in a way you could prove. It started small, the kind of thing your brain swears was always there. A glimpse of red shingles where they didn't belong. A familiar pattern of warped siding behind a dune. A porch railing shaped exactly like the one I remembered gripping when I thought I was going to die. The first time I saw it, I was driving along the coastal highway. I glanced down at the beach and it was just there, sitting crooked in the sand, windows dark, door slightly open like it was mid-breath. I almost drove off the road. I told myself it wasn't possible. The house from part one had been condemned, fenced off, left to rot. The storm that night had nearly torn it apart. There was no way it had been dragged intact onto another beach. But the next morning, when I drove by again, the house was gone, just an empty stretch of sand. 2 days later, I saw it again, this time perched at the edge of a cliffside overlook, like it had climbed the rocks to get there. The same peeling paint, the same crooked shutters, the same front window that always seemed to have someone standing just behind the glass. I stared too long. When I blinked, the house wasn't on the cliff anymore. It sat 20 feet closer. Not dramatically, not suddenly, just wrong. Like it used my blink to take a step. I left in a hurry. That night I barely slept. Every time I drifted off, my dreams placed that house outside my window, watching me, through the glass, the way it watched me through its own. The third sighting didn't feel like a sighting. It felt like an ambush. I was on the beach, far from the places I'd seen it before. Safe, or so I thought. The tide was low, the sun setting. Everything painted in that orange-grey colour that makes the world feel flat. I was halfway down the shore when I noticed the pattern in the sand ahead of me. A rectangle, perfect, as though something massive had rested there recently. And in the centre, a single wet footprint. My footprint. I froze, looked around, listened. The wind died so fast it felt yanked away. When I turned, the house was suddenly there. Not close, not too close. Maybe 100 yards away, at the far end of the dunes. But its front door was open, swinging slowly even though there was no breeze. I blinked. It was closer, not dramatically, just enough to be undeniable. Another blink, closer. I clamped my eyes open so wide they burned, tears gathering at the edges. My vision blurred, but I refused to blink, refused to give it another inch. I backed away, steps crunching in the sand, throat locked too tight to scream. My eyes stung harder. My vision flickered. My body betrayed me. I blinked, and the house stood directly in front of me, close enough that I could smell the damp wood, close enough that I could see fresh indentations on the porch, footprints leading inside, fresh ones, mine. The door slowly creaked wider. Something breathed inside the house, a long, low exhale like something settling into a familiar chair. I ran until my legs gave out, until the sun was gone and the moon hurt to look at, until I put miles between me and that place. When I came home, I slammed my door, closed every curtain, locked everything twice. I thought distance would help, but tonight I heard something. A soft shuffle, wood shifting, the faint vibration of a structure settling somewhere too close. When I looked out my bedroom window, just once, just for a split second, I saw the porch railing, the same one I once held onto for dear life. The house is here, and it's just waiting for me to blink. The knock started on a Wednesday, not late, not the usual witching hour stuff, but at exactly 9:17 p.m., the kind of time too specific to be random. I was on the couch, half asleep, when I heard it. One knock, just one, sharp, deliberate. I froze, didn't move, didn't call out. I just stared at the front door like a terrified animal waiting for a predator to reveal itself. After a few seconds, I convinced myself it was a package delivery or a neighbor. I checked the peephole. No one was there, but the wet footprint on my welcome mat. That was when my chest tightened. Barefoot, small, delicate, as if a woman had stood there dripping onto the wood. I wiped it away with my sleeve and tried to breathe. Told myself it was condensation, fog, a prank, anything. The next night at 9:17, it happened again. One knock, same sound, same exact rhythm. This time, before checking the peephole, I pulled up the notification from my doorbell cam. The video loaded, static, then movement. A woman, slim frame, long hair hanging heavy and wet, a green swimsuit clinging to her skin like it was still soaked. She stood directly in front of my door, head tilted slightly to the left, eyes wide and unfocused, like she was listening to something behind the camera. But what froze the blood in my veins wasn't her. It was the timestamp, 9:17 p.m., and right as she lifted her hand to knock, the footage glitched, split. 3 panels appeared for a fraction of a second. Left panel, her knocking at my door. Middle panel, her knocking at the house across the street. Right panel, her knocking at the house next door, all at the same moment, all with the same single knock. The doorbell cam errored out. The video cut to black. I slammed my laptop shut like that would help. The room suddenly felt too cold, too damp. The same thick, ocean-scented humidity I remembered from the stories about her. The girl in the green swimsuit, who smiled in old photos. The one who drowned in 1978 and never left the shoreline. Except now she wasn't on the shoreline. She was on my street. The third night, the entire neighborhood froze at 9:17. Everyone knew. Everyone expected it. You could feel the tension through the walls. Even the dogs went silent. When the knock came, one single knock echoing like it hit every door at once, I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I didn't dare check the peephole this time. But my phone buzzed. Doorbell cam alert. Against every instinct screaming in my skull, I tapped it open. She stood there again, hair dripping onto my doormat, head tilted, eyes glassy. skin pale like she'd been underwater all night, and behind her, far behind, across the entire dark street, her, another her, and another, and another. A line of identical figures stretching down the block, each one approaching a different house, each one raising her hand at the exact same unnatural angle. My throat tightened so hard it hurt. The girl in the swimsuit stepped closer to my camera, so close her face filled the frame, and her lips parted like she was about to speak. But instead of words, a sound came through, a faint gurgle, water moving through lungs that don't breathe air anymore. Then the screen distorted, her face stretched, her eyes rolled upward in opposite directions, and every single duplicate on every screen did the same motion in perfect synchrony. Then they all vanished at once. No walking away, no fading, just gone. The water on my welcome mat lingered though. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. Last night, something changed. I heard the knock, but this time, it wasn't at 9:17. It was earlier, much earlier, just after sunset. I checked the window. My street was empty. No duplicates, no drenched silhouettes, just darkness. But then the knock came again. Not on the front door. On my bedroom door. One single knock, soft, wet, and impossibly close. My phone lit up in my trembling hand. A doorbell alert. The girl in the green swimsuit wasn't on the porch this time. She was inside the house, and the timestamp glitched over and over again, cycling through numbers that didn't exist. She wasn't knocking to be let in. She was knocking because she already was. I knew something was wrong the moment my foot touched the sand. Not because of anything I saw, but because of the sound, or rather, the lack of it. Sand is never silent. It crunches, shifts, gives way. Even the smallest step makes a tiny noise. But when I stepped onto the beach that morning, it was like stepping onto memory foam. Soft, absorbing, too ready. The sand didn't shift under my heel. It sank. Not normally, not the way sand sinks. It molded itself, curved upward, shaped itself around my foot like it wanted to remember me. I froze. I've survived things the ocean shouldn't have let me survive. I've seen things rise from the water that didn't belong on the surface. I've felt the weight of something watching me when I thought I was alone. But this was different. This was personal. I slowly pulled my foot back, expecting the imprint to hold my footprint. It didn't. It held my entire leg, perfectly, every detail, knee bend, calf curve, even the faint impression of the veins behind my ankle. Like the sand had anticipated the rest of me, like it was shaping what would come next. I staggered back onto the boardwalk, heart hammering. My hands shook so violently I almost dropped the railing. The beach was empty. No gulls, no shells, no driftwood. Just smooth sand stretching from the dunes to the shoreline like a blank canvas waiting for a body. My body. I told myself to leave, to turn around, get in my car, and forget any of this ever happened. But something at the shoreline caught my eye. A handprint, not freshly pressed into the sand, but rising out of it, smooth and perfectly shaped, as if the sand had been sculpted from underneath. And beside it, an impression of a head, a shoulder, a torso. All shallow like a ghost lay down there but didn't sink fully in. My breath hitched painfully. Those weren't random impressions. They weren't the shape of someone. They were my shape. I backed away slowly, but the sand shifted again. Not beneath my feet, but ahead of me, closer to the tide. A new indentation formed, smooth as poured plaster. A body outline, my outline. This time complete. Arms at my sides, head tilted slightly, legs straight. The kind of pose you put someone in when you're trying to make them comfortable. or when you're preparing them. The wind picked up suddenly, not from the sea, but from behind me, blowing toward the water, pushing me toward the imprint, guiding, urging, the way you guide something delicate to where it needs to go. I dug my heels into the boardwalk, panic rising like a tide inside my chest. No, I whispered, but the sand reacted. The imprint deepened, slowly, patiently, like something beneath the surface pushed downward, making space, a burial space. The tide inched higher, licking at the edges of the outline, smoothing the shape as if smoothing a sheet over a sleeping body. And then I saw it, the thing I'd been afraid to notice. Another imprint appearing beside mine. Not me, not a mirror. Someone, something, lying next to where the sand wanted me. Its body was longer, its limbs bent wrong, its head too narrow. It wasn't a grave, it was a pair, a set. The wind behind me stopped. The ocean became silent, the kind of silence that feels heavy, like thousands of gallons of water are holding themselves back, waiting. Because it wasn't just remembering my weight, it was practicing it. It was preparing for me. I forced myself backward, step by step, until my feet hit the parking lot asphalt. The moment I left the sand, the impressions collapsed. Not like sand being blown or kicked, but like breath leaving a body, flattening, smoothing, erasing. All except one thing. A narrow line remained in the sand. My exact height, my exact shape. A perfect indentation, untouched by wind. And next to it, a handprint. Deep, sharp, fingers too long, waiting for mine. I haven't gone back. But 2 hours ago, I found sand on my bedroom floor. Just a pinch, just enough. And when I wiped it away, the wood beneath it had a faint, perfect indentation, the shape of my shoulder. It started with a reflection that wasn't mine. I visit the tide pools every morning, not because I want to, but because my therapist said routine helps with anxiety. Which is funny, because nothing has ever made my anxiety worse than those tide pools. But that first morning, the pools looked normal, calm, clear, mirrors for the sky. I leaned over one I've always liked, a circular pool surrounded by a ring of muscles like an eye with its lashes curled inward. I expected to see my own face looking back. Instead, I saw myself running, not from anything, towards something. But in the reflection, I wasn't alone. Something tall and thin moved behind me. Its arms swung too low, its neck bent like it didn't fully understand how a spine should work. And both of us were running toward the ocean, not away from it. I jerked back so fast my shoe slipped on algae and I slammed onto the rocks. When I sat back up, my reflection was normal again. Just me, eye bags and all, staring into water that should have shown nothing but sunlight. I told myself it was a trick of the light. Stress, exhaustion, something boring, something explainable. But the next day, the tide pool showed something else. This time, it showed people on the beach. The survivors. The ones the ocean had marked. I recognized them even though the images were warped by the water. The man with the footprints, the girl from under the pier, the one with the lantern, the woman from the window cottage, the boy with the whispering shell. They stood in a line facing the ocean. Then the reflection began to shake, like something beneath the water was rising. The horizon buckled in the glassy surface. Waves towered upward, but not like normal waves. They rose straight up, high enough to swallow the entire beach in one motion, and the survivors didn't run. That's what terrified me the most. They just stood there like they knew they couldn't outrun what was coming. When I blinked, the tide pool stilled. Only water again. but on the rocks around it, tiny cracks had appeared. Thin, branching lines radiating outward like something underneath the stone tried to push its way up. On the third morning, I didn't want to look. I tried to walk past the pools completely. I really did. But my feet turned toward that same circular pool without my permission. Like gravity had shifted. Like the pool had something new to show me and wasn't going to let me leave without seeing it. This time, the reflection was already moving before I leaned over. I saw my house, water surrounding it, not flood water, ocean water, churning and black, rising higher and higher until the windows were swallowed and the roof disappeared beneath the surface. I saw the girl in the green swimsuit, walking down my street, dripping, smiling with lips that didn't quite fit her face anymore. I saw the abandoned beach house from part 1 standing in my driveway, door open as if I'd left it out overnight like a car. I saw the lantern glowing on my porch, the sand imprint forming on my living room floor, the shell sitting on my pillow like it was waiting for me to listen. Every story, every survivor, every warning, all converging, all coming to my house. And then the reflection shifted again. The tide pool darkened, its surface smoothed out like a sheet of glass. I saw myself, lying face down, in water, arms floating, hair spreading like seaweed, completely still, not drowned, not struggling, just returned to the ocean like something that had escaped and finally been collected again. I staggered back from the pool, breath broken in pieces. My legs shook like I'd run miles. I turned to leave, to get as far away from that pool as I could. But the water behind me rippled. Not from wind, from movement. Slow, careful movement. I forced myself to look. The tide pool was showing one more thing. Not my death. Not the ocean swallowing my home. Not the survivors gathered on the sand. It showed tomorrow, dawn. My reflection kneeling beside the pool, staring down into it. Except, the reflection blinked before I did. I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't breathe until I reached my car. But when I opened the door, a thin, perfect line of seaweed lay across the seat, wet, fresh, shaped exactly like the curve of a hand. And tonight, I can hear water dripping in my house even though every tap is off. The tide pool didn't just show the future. It showed me that the future is already moving toward me. It happened on a night with no moon, a night the sky forgot to shine and the air felt heavy enough to crush your ribs. The survivors had been feeling it for days, that pressure, that pulling. Like the ocean was drawing a breath it had been holding for years. I didn't plan to go to the beach. None of us did. But around midnight, every survivor felt the same thing. A need, a tug, a whisper beneath the skin. So we went. The sand felt wrong the moment our feet touched it. Not soft, not dry, hard, packed, like something beneath it was holding everything in place. And the ocean wasn't where it was supposed to be. It had pulled back farther than any tide in recorded history. Miles, actual miles, leaving a black, glistening expanse of exposed seafloor stretching out into the night. Ribs of old shipwrecks, rusted poles, ropes tangled like veins, driftwood shaped like bones, things that had never been meant to see the air again. And farther out, where even low tide shouldn't reach, silhouettes, dozens, hundreds, waiting. At first they looked human, until they moved. Some jerked like puppets learning their strings. Some tilted their heads backward too far, necks bending like wet rope. Some stood perfectly still, as if remembering the posture of a living person. And one by one, they turned toward us. The green swimsuit girl was the first to step forward. Her feet didn't splash. The seafloor lifted under her, rising to meet her steps. Behind her, the lantern swung from a pale hand. Something crawled beside her that might have once been a shell. The sand behind them rippled like something big and slow was pushing underneath. I wanted to run. God, every part of me wanted to run. But the tide pool biologist whispered, "They're not coming to shore." And she was right. They stopped halfway across the exposed ocean floor. A perfect line of them facing us. The survivors. The ones who escaped. The man with the buried footprints stepped beside me. The camper from the circle of sand. The one who heard his name under the boardwalk. The lantern man. The girl from the reflection window. All of us breathing too fast, too shallow. The abandoned house appeared on the dunes behind us. Not placed, not walked. Grown there, like the earth pushed it up from the sand in one slow exhale. Its door swung open. The chairs from sunrise lined themselves along the tide's edge. All of them turned toward the dark horizon. Something enormous shifted deep in the exposed distance. A mountain-sized shadow bending, rising, stretching. The survivor next to me whispered, "Do we run?" And truthfully, I didn't know. The ocean's creatures weren't moving toward us anymore. They were waiting for something bigger, something older, something that needed the tide out this far to show its face. The green swimsuit girl raised her arm, not pointing, not waving, something in between, a gesture that felt ancient, ritualistic. The lantern's flame flared, blue-white, hot enough that we felt it from where we stood. Then the sand under our feet shivered, not from an earthquake, from footsteps. Footsteps so large the ground trembled in waves. Footsteps from something that lived where even the drowned road couldn't reach. Footsteps approaching the surface. The tide pool biologist grabbed my arm. "It's choosing." "What is?" I whispered. She shook her head. "No. Who?" The ocean, miles out, split. Not like a wave, like a curtain opening. And from the darkness behind it, something stepped forward. We didn't see its face. We didn't see its form. Just the shadow of it. Taller than the waterline, broader than the rocks. Something that made the survivors fall silent because we finally understood. We were never meant to escape. We were meant to return. The lantern swung toward us. The shell cracked open. The sand beneath us softened in a slow, hungry sigh, and the ocean spoke, not in words, but in a vibration that rattled our ribs. Choose. Run, or follow the tide in. Some survivors stepped back, some stepped forward. I don't remember which direction I moved, just the feeling of the sand rising under my feet, welcoming me, and the distant silhouette opening its arms wide like the ocean itself had missed me. When the tide finally rushed back in, it came silently. No wave, no roar, just darkness swallowing everything. And in that last instant before the water covered my eyes, I realized something I still can't say out loud. It wasn't coming to take us. It was coming to bring us home, 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 coming to bring us home.